Well, well, look who's inside again.
Our gamer rises from a fitful night's sleep, his hand eagerly reaching for his trusty Viper V570 gaming mouse to begin the day's hunt. Frags come easy thanks to the 12,000 DPI Avago laser sensor, allowing the gamer to score headshot after headshot on their hapless prey. With 13 programmable keys, along with addressable RGB, any gamer can customize the look and feel of the V570 to fit their needs. Strike fear into your next meal with a full lineup of gear from Viper Gaming by following the link down in the video description.
Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff. I get asked all the time why I bother with older Xeon CPUs when it comes to building new gaming PCs or workstations, and my answer is always low budget value. But every so often I figure I should put those claims to the test, so over the last couple weeks I've put together these two systems. Representing our brand new gaming PC is this beauty in the Fractal Design Pop Mini Air. We've got a Core i5 12600K, 32GB of DDR5 5200 MTS memory from Lexar, all mounted to an MSI MAG B660M Mortar motherboard. The total price without GPU or storage was $982 at the time of filming. And for our Xeon system, I picked up an HP Z440 workstation. It's rocking an Intel Xeon E5 1660V4 and 32GB of DDR4 registered ECC memory running at 2133 MTS. This system is a collection of used parts, and again, without GPU or storage, would only run you $298 to build today. That puts the i5 system at almost 3.5 times more expensive, so the budget side of this argument is already starting to show. Storage and graphics card are going to be swapped between the PCs to keep testing as uniform as possible, and I'll be using a Lexar NM620 Gen 3x4 1TB drive along with an RTX 3070 Founders card respectively. Adding those into the pricing brings the i5 up to $1,597 and the Z440 up to $913. That closes the gap significantly, but still has the i5 at 75% more expensive. How will that play out when it comes to the benchmarks though? I've used old Intel Xeons for years as a source of affordable, high core count chips for budget and mid-range PCs. While not the newest technology around, some models do have quite a bit to offer in a modern computer. Things like support for a gargantuan amount of system memory, ECC support, and more PCI Express lanes than consumer chips have even dreamed of. These specs aren't without some compromises though, and let's get the obvious one out of the way first: single core performance. Not only are used Xeon CPUs, like the Xeon E5 1660V4 that I'm using today, based on older fabrication technology and architectures, gaming performance was never a goal when installing these into workstations or servers back when they were new. System memory configuration is a bit odd when using Xeon CPUs. Every consumer CPU today supports dual-channel memory, essentially allowing 2 lanes for traffic to move in and out of between your RAM and your CPU's memory controller. DDR4-based systems often support memory speeds of 3200 MTS or higher, with higher-end systems eclipsing 4000 MTS in some cases. Most Xeon CPUs of this era are hard-capped at 2400 MHz, so you might think they stand no chance against higher-speed DDR4 or DDR5-based systems. But where CPUs like the i5 12600K have 2 memory channels, Xeon CPUs have 4, essentially doubling the bandwidth between them. Now, it's not entirely linear, and some tasks will still benefit from faster single-channel performance memory, but in general, having quad-channel 2133 memory is about on par with dual-channel at 4000 or even higher. You can argue all of that statement down in the comments below. Whether I'm right or you are, it's all just more engagement for me. When it comes to CPU specs, this really isn't a fair fight, with the i5 12600K being the latest and greatest mid-tier offering from Intel. We're looking at 6 performance cores and 12 threads with a max turbo of 4.9 GHz. Add in the 4 efficiency cores that can turbo up to 3.6 GHz on their own, and you've got a 150-watt speed demon ready to chew through just about any task. Launching in Q4 of 2021, the CPU can be had for only $269. Nice. Meanwhile, the Xeon E5 1660V4 is an 8-core, 16-threaded CPU with a max turbo of 3.8 GHz, originally selling back in 2016 for $1,100. For this video, I've applied the Turbo Unlock mod to the HP Z440 BIOS. And while you might say that gives the Xeon an unfair advantage over the i5, which is running at stock speeds, remember the Xeon is still going to be limited to its 140 watt TDP, and beefier cooling solutions would be needed for both CPUs if we push the clocks any higher. So I still consider this to be a fair fight, especially given that these sell on eBay today for around $100. And in a surprise late entry, I also decided to benchmark the Xeon E5 2698V3 to see how it would stack up. This is the oldest CPU in the lineup, first hitting the market in 2014 for a staggering $3,200. For that money, you're getting 16 cores and 32 threads that could turbo individually up to 3.6 GHz. But again, that pesky 135 watt TDP keeps getting in the way of this one, as I only got 2.5 GHz with AVX workloads and around 3 GHz in games. Still, a good point of comparison given the $78 price tag you can grab one for today. And now, onto the benchmark, starting off with our standard quarter-mile Cinebench R23 run. We see the i5 absolutely mop up the competition in both single and multi-threaded performance. As both the i5 and 1660V4 have 16 threads, it makes for a very interesting matchup, as the 12600K is pretty much twice as fast as the Xeon, scoring 16,400 against just 8,400. What was really surprising though was how poorly the 2698V3 did, with its 32 threads, pulling down just 11,400 points. Back when Intel was stuck on 14nm and 4-core CPUs, Xeons would absolutely destroy consumer chips in multi-threaded performance. Anymore, not so much. Now, this is only one test, but it does go to show that whether your needs are single-threaded or multi-threaded, a modern CPU is absolutely your best choice when it comes to full-on performance. But what about value? For the core system, is the 12600K PC 3.5 times faster than the HP Z440? How about even 75% faster if you take into account the total cost of the system with the RTX 3070 and storage included? All games were tested at 1440p and high or ultra settings. And hold on, I can already hear people complaining about GPU bottlenecks and how I really should have used an RTX 3090 Ti to show the performance difference of these CPUs without anything standing in their way. While you are correct about a faster GPU showing a wider gap in performance, I don't see someone buying an HP Z440 installing a 3090 Ti into it. Hell, even a 12600K is a bit of a stretch for that budget. A 3060 or a 3070 is a much more realistic option for both of these builds, and that's the performance difference that I'm after. With that out of the way, when it comes to gaming performance, specifically average frame rates, let's just say the difference was less than dramatic. It should be said before we dive in though, the 12600K won every single test hands down, and in fact ran away with a couple games when it comes to 1% and 0.1% lows. Starting with Doom Eternal running at 1440p and the Nightmare preset, we see an average of 225 frames per second on the 12600K and a 0.1% low of 136. Both Xeons are able to keep things close though, with 215 frames per second on the 1660V4 and a surprising 221 frames per second out of the 2698V3. That's a difference of just 2% and not exactly the dominating performance you might expect out of the i5. Now, the 12600K did perform around 18% better when it came to low frame times, but we're still only talking about 136 versus 115 FPS, and that's only in 1 out of every 1,000 frames that dipped that low. So, a win for the i5, but a huge value proposition for sub-$100 Xeons. Now, I could go on for the next 5 minutes about each game that I tested and the exact numbers and percentages that I saw between the three CPUs, but I feel that would just be wasting my time and yours, so let's cut to the chase. Average frame rate saw the 12600K win each and every time, but it was only around 5 to 14% faster than the Xeon 1660V4. It's a similar story with the 2698V3, though with one anomaly when it comes to Wreckfest. It seems that even with a massive thread count advantage, it wasn't enough to keep up with the i5, with the 12600K being a full 45% faster at 223 frames per second versus just 153. Low frame rates saw a much larger disparity, and that makes sense given the single-threaded performance gap between the CPUs. The 12600K was between 17 and 85% faster than the 1660V4, and scored over 3 times faster in low frame rates in Borderlands 3 against the 2698V3. While those numbers sound dominating and impressive, keep in mind what we're actually looking at when it comes to frame rates, and ask yourself if you can spot the difference without running benchmarks. In the case of Borderlands 3, the low frame rates were 45 FPS on the i5 and 14 FPS on the 2698. For just about anyone, the Xeon wouldn't be acceptable, and is a stark difference from 45 frames per second. Red Dead Redemption 2 presented a 36% gap in performance between the i5 and the 2698, but we're talking about a 0.1% low of 63 versus 46 frames per second. The average frame rates were also only 80 and 73 FPS respectively, so while there is a measurable difference between the two chips, I think most people would be hard-pressed to spot the perceptual difference without having the numbers in front of them. The same thought crossed my mind in Cyberpunk 2077, where sure, there is a 50% gap in the 0.1% low between the Xeon and the i5, with the Xeon managing just 43 FPS versus 65 for the i5. But perceptually, you'd be hard-pressed to spot a difference of 1 frame out of every 1,000. The average frame rate between all three chips was virtually identical as well, scoring between 87 and 90 frames per second. Hardware reviews and build guides are, let's just say, an interesting business to be in these days. Everything is too expensive, gamer standards for what is acceptable are as unobtainable as ever, and at the end of the day, I'm just a shill who doesn't know anything anyway. I'm sure this video is going to draw quite a few comments about how anything below 60 FPS induces migraines in the greater populace without considering the megapint of G Fuel they just guzzled down. But my job as a reviewer is to provide not only benchmark results, but also my opinion and context to my testing so you can form your own opinion. Is the i5 12600K faster in every measurable way than the used Xeons that I have here? Absolutely it is, and honestly, it's not even close. At worst, the i5 is twice as fast as the Xeon 1660 V4, and in synthetic benchmarks, it's not even a fair fight. When it comes to gaming performance though, I'm looking at an average frame rate difference of between 5 and 13%, but with a 75% price premium on this PC as a whole. A couple minor tweaks to in-game settings would likely pull up a good number of the low frame rates on the Xeon PCs without impacting visuals in any dramatic way. And that leaves us with the conclusion that, while old and slow, a sub-$100 Xeon can still hang with the latest CPUs when it comes to gaming performance, and at a significant cost savings. In all of my game testing, only Borderlands 3 had any frame rates below acceptable levels, with some fairly demanding titles like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Cyberpunk 2077 posting very respectable numbers when paired with an RTX 3070. If it's workstation tasks that you're after, I'd recommend going with the i5 if your budget allows, as again, you're going to see up to double the performance when it comes to video rendering or other high-end use cases. But for gaming, not only is there no shame in running something like a Xeon E5 1660 V4 in a build, along with an RTX 3070, it could save you upwards of $600 when compared to a modern consumer PC build. As always, if you're interested in any of the parts from either of today's builds, I will have affiliate links down in the video description. Go give those a look. On your way down there, make sure to drop this video a like and subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Twitter at Craft Computing for daily shenanigans like this. And if you like the content you see on this channel and want to help support me in what I do, consider joining the Patreon. Link is also down in the video description. That's going to do it for me in this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video. I'm not going to finish that. It's good, but no. Beer for today, I hope, is actually still okay. The can has burst, although it is still very firm and holding pressure, so I have some hope. This is from Evil Twin Brewing in New York City. This is the Double Dipped Chocolate Cinnamon Cherry, a pastry stout, clocking in at 10%. Oh yeah, I think we're fine. Dude, it pours like velvet cake. Oh my god. Look at the chocolate. There's literally chocolate at the bottom. There's a significant amount of something at the bottom. I feel like I should have stirred this beer up first. Okay, there we go. Wow.
It tells you to shake gently or something on the can.
It probably does. I might have to stir this one. Keep refrigerated, drink fresh. That's all it says. What am I doing pouring this into a Pilsner glass anyway? Oh my god.
Look at all that chocolate left over on the side of your other glass.
Look at the can. Rhett.
Jeez.
It's syrup. It's literally chocolate syrup. Like, you all saw me pour syrup into this glass, but it still didn't quite prepare me. This is like a jammy sour had a bastard child with a pastry stout. It is that level of thick and sweet, and savory and chewy, and thick with 3 C's. Man, I may end up sharing this with Rhett, only because I think 16 ounces is going to be way too much. I was really craving a stout. Now I'm kind of wanting a Pilsner. Rhett, where's the reindeer?
I need to swish my mouth out.
I didn't realize we were filming an episode of Man vs. Food. Okay, now that I've gotten past the thickness of this beer, seriously, it should come with a knife taped to the side of the can. Let's get into the actual flavor profile. So far, everything that they say that should be in here, that is an imperial stout with chocolate cherry and a touch of cinnamon, or double dipped chocolate cinnamon cherry, man, is that all in here. First off, chocolate for days, if the chocolate syrup at the rim of the can wasn't any indication of that. The cherry is a little bit sweet, a little bit tart, kind of like a Bing cherry, but without any syrup or like added sugar. It's a very natural cherry flavor. You know, kind of the opposite of what you normally get, which is like the super syrupy pie cherries or maraschinos or something like that. Actually quite pleasant. And finally, that cinnamon just kind of floats right on top. I mean, it have to. It's a lot less dense than this beer is. But physics joke.
For all the physicists out there, this one's for you.
Viscosity! All right, I've had this one. I enjoy it. I don't know how much more I'm going to enjoy, though.